Hey everyone, and welcome to Let's Talk Azure podcast. And you're here with Alan and Sam. Hey Sam, how are you?
I am good, thank you, Alan. How are you?
Yeah, I'm not too bad. How's your week been?
Not too bad. We ordered some new audio equipment bits from Amazon, didn't we?
Yeah,
And had quite an exciting delivery process. Yeah, so we got some pop filters for our microphones, and yeah, we thought they were going to be, here next day or whatever, but they actually ended up coming from the south of France, which was very exotic for us, a little bit exciting when we saw where it was being dispatched from. But apart from that, yeah, it's not been too bad. I think here where we are, things pandemic related are definitely reducing. Day on day, week on week. We haven't had any sort of second spike. Touchwood.
yep. So, and for myself, I don't think I'm going to be going anywhere work related anytime soon. It's all going to be remote. Whilst we're in this world now, I guess it's the new way of working.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, and I think to be honest with you, I think for us, it's going to be one of the positives of it is there are going to be more clients out there that are going to realize that they don't need to come down for meetings and for everybody to meet up every so often, to utilize it's sort of forced companies to utilize like Teams and Zoom and Slack and all of those different technologies to use them better, so that you don't have to be in the same room with somebody.
yep, and we've seen that, organizations might say that it will take them 6 months to a year to, digitally transform so they can do remote working and do it within a couple of months because they've had to. So,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. Well, I saw there was like a tweet or a meme where it was like, um, who's the biggest proponent of digital transformation in your business? And it's got like your CTO, your head of technology, and then it's got COVID as the last one. Do you know what I mean? It's like, because we've been saying about this, remote working. You've talked about it for years about bring your own device and these um what dumb not dumb terminals, but do you know what I mean? Like where you're in this really connected environment. And instead of your network perimeter being your premise, it's you're encrypting devices and you're doing good identity protection and all of those newer technologies that we can use. And now laggard companies have now like yeah, we've got to get in on this.
yep, and the way of thinking that your on-premise network is your fortress, and now everywhere you've now got to secure. So, yes, a lot has
Yeah.
changed. Um,
Yeah, I think one of the really interesting things for me is I set up my wife's new PC today, and I obviously use Office 365, and I've got autopilot enabled, and she was just amazed how um, we could just install the base operating system. It popped up and said, "Hey, welcome to my company name." And she was like, "Whoa, this is amazing!" And then it configured automatically, installed all the apps, and the first thing it did, we left it to install, and when we came back, Teams was open, with it already logged in, and it was just she just couldn't believe from her sort of corporate world that that's even possible now. And I said, this is the out of box experience for a lot of companies now. Where you can just send somebody a laptop and they can sort of, I'll use air quotes, install and configure themselves. So it's just, yeah, it's absolutely mental. So
yep, that stuff excites me quite a lot. Doing all that sort of stuff and helping businesses
I know it does that.
streamline those
I know it
processes.
does
Yeah,
that. Well, I
but
said, she said to me today, she said, "Is this what Al does?" And I said, "Well, it is kind of what he does." Do you know what I mean?
yep,
But
yep.
it's like, but yeah, I think seeing it in practice, right? Because we've done it before, where we've got in tune managed devices and all of that sort of stuff. But to see it without the need to talk to Al today, do you know what I mean? That was the real thing for me is that it worked. Do you know what I mean? I knew it would work anyway, but there was no need to talk to anybody from quotes IT. So yeah, it was really good.
Yep, configure once and then it's there. But
Yeah, yeah, I think that's
anyway,
it. Yeah.
we're not talking about all that
No, we're not.
exciting
No.
that part of the exciting stuff anyway. So this episode is around learning and accreditations for Microsoft. So how you can become certified in some of their new roles and certifications. So we're going to talk about that today, aren't we, Sam? So
Yeah. Yeah, we thought
let's
that it would be good for everybody to understand, because accreditation with Microsoft and learning is really important in this ecosystem, and I think there's many benefits to becoming certified, and we'll go through all of those. But I think it can be a bit overwhelming for people to understand, why should I certify? What's in it for me? And what and the sort of the easiest ways to get started with certifying and education.
Yeah, so let's look at where it was and where it is today, because Microsoft have made quite a few changes over the last couple of years, from the Microsoft Certified Solutions Associate and Solutions Experts and the Solutions Developers accreditations. They've moved to role-based certifications. So it's now moved to kind of your day-to-day role rather than being something on a specific product. So the example is for Azure, you've got Azure Foundations to start off with, moving into Azure Development Associate, moving on to expert level accreditations there. So yeah, so what do you have to do to get certified, Sam?
Should we start with the first sort of level of
Yeah.
fundamentals? I think for people that have been in IT for a long time, um, the fundamental level gives you literally that base level of understanding of all of the core parts of Azure, right, and Office, and Microsoft 365. Yeah, and a lot of it, going through, the learning that's there is, maybe just about, cloud architecture, and what is the cloud, and these more high level topics than necessarily deep technical dives into specific technologies, but they allow you to do to learn and to do certifications, at that lower level, so to sort of get you started, make sure your base understanding is there, and then from there you then move on to role based and expert based
Yeah, and
certifications.
you're absolutely right that the fundamentals gives you that baseline. Do I know the basics before I start hitting the associate and the expert accreditations? Um, I mean, they don't. The fundamentals don't count towards some of your as part of the exams. Don't count towards the associate and expert certifications, but they're definitely a good baseline to understand how much you know, and then to progress into the associate role based certification.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's really good. I mean, the fundamentals, I would say, are more for complete beginners, really. I mean, that's not to say that there's absolutely no value there for existing IT professionals. But imagine you were somebody that was moving. You'd never done any sort of cloud work or development, to get that core understanding of what's the difference between a dedicated server and a cloud, virtual server, and virtual machine, sorry, or what is containerization, and you know what's the need for Microsoft 365, right? All of those sort of fundamental questions and answers.
Yeah, absolutely. And it might be, well, I mean, we'll talk about the exams later, but it might be a good one to, maybe if you've never done a Microsoft exam, to maybe start on one of those. Not to say it's going to be easy, but
Yeah,
it might be a good starting point, because those exams are cheaper than the associate and the expert exams.
yeah.
Um,
Well,
so
there's definitely a lot less to learn, isn't there? That's for sure.
yeah, so it's definitely a good point to start. So do you have to certify?
Um, I mean, I suppose the question is, for me, there is absolutely no need to certify, I think is what I would say. But I think um, it as an individual professional, I would always advise people to certify because for me, it proves it well to some degree it proves a level of competency that you have. You know, it's something that you can put on your CV or your LinkedIn profile, and it just shows. Sam has passed, for instance, the Azure Developer Associate, right? And that means that there's a baseline that he's passed that exam. You know, um,
Yep. So, I mean, for myself, I've not I've been in IT for God, 10, 12, 14 years now. I can't remember now. But with my previous employer, I could have done certifications, but didn't have the time and didn't feel that I needed them. Um, but with my current employer, I've grabbed a couple of the new role based ones.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
and I
should we
think,
just talk about role based a second? Because
yeah,
I think that's important. Because there are so many different sort of professions within inside of Azure and Microsoft 365, right? They've separated out these sort of channels that people go down to sort of bucket people into certain roles on the platform, right? So you've got developers, sort of like developers like me, really. You've got Power Platform. You've got what else is there, Al, for role
there's
based?
administrators,
Yeah,
various, Azure administrators, 365 administrators. You've
yeah,
got security engineers or security based
yeah,
roles, um, and various places. I mean, within the Azure space and the certifications, there are loads of different pockets that you can go
yeah.
down.
Yeah, exactly. And as we've just mentioned before, is that there are different levels, um, of certifications. So there's associate level, which is sort of mid tier, isn't it? That's sort of mid level, and then you've got fundamental, associate, and expert. Yeah. And
Yep.
then you can specialize on top of that as well. So, for instance, there's a speciality for SAP on Azure, and then let's just go into one of them, shall we, as an example. So I'm just going to pull up one now for a Microsoft Certified Azure Administrator Associate. Okay. And so some of these certifications have one or many exams that you have to pass. So it depends on sort of the level of the accreditation, but sometimes it's maybe just you have to pass one exam and then you get the certification, or you might have to pass two or more exams to get it.
Yep. So, I mean, we're talking about Azure certifications here, but with the Microsoft ones, the security administrator one, you only have to pass one exam. But when you go into the um, administration expert part, you have to do two exams
Okay.
to get that
Yeah.
that accreditation.
Yeah. And I suppose another point to make, I mean, the matrix of different possibilities here is absolutely insane, because not insane, but there are so many paths, right? If, there is
Yes.
a document you can see, and they've got like a it's not like a waterfall chart, but it's like a chart, isn't it? It shows you all the different paths you can go down and where your starting point is. But it's also good to know that there's multiple levels. There's fundamental. You've got an associate that then moves on to becoming an expert, and then potentially specialize on top of that. So there is this learning pathway that you can follow. It's very structured, isn't it? And it's very, the roles are very well defined.
Yeah, and it's fairly simple to understand where you want to go and what you need to do.
Yeah.
Previously, in the past, it may have been a little bit tricky to work out which exams you needed.
Yeah, and
Um,
I think the thing is as well is these role based exams are kind of, I want to say they're smaller. They're more focused is probably the best way to describe it. Because, for instance, you don't necessarily have to just have one, right? You could be a certified Azure developer and then have an expert level in DevOps, right? So it's not like you go down one path and you can't look at anything else, because one of the things for me, like the older MCSD that we had, it was a lot of exams to get to it. You had to work through it all, and it's like that's all you could do. You were just an MCSD, right? And for me as a developer, there's multiple different types of development, right? So there's there's DevOps engineering, there's bespoke solution engineering, and then there's like Azure and platform. So Power Platform, for instance, right? And all of these different things. But now they can break up these roles. So you can have a Power Platform expert, you can have a solutions expert, and then you can have a DevOps expert. And it just gives there's more flexibility for individuals.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm not too sure about the Azure side of things because I'm more the Microsoft side.
Yeah,
Um, but with the getting to the Microsoft M365 certified expert, you can go one or two ways with the associate roles. So you don't have to do the security one. You could do a modern management one, or you could do a SharePoint. Depending on what area you're working within that
yeah,
environment, it's you can specialize at the associate level and then become the expert of generalizing the whole thing. So,
yeah,
and you can
exactly.
take, you can get a couple of the associate ones as well based
Yeah.
on what you want to do. So,
Yeah, and I think that's the beauty of it. You can you can work at them at your own pace. We'll talk about how you learn and all of that in a bit, but you can learn at your own pace. You can do it and get certified, and jump around if you need to. Um, I suppose one big thing, just to go back to why should you certify? I think we should talk about everybody's employers and
mhm.
the Microsoft partner network as well, because obviously from an employer point of view, certifying their engineers, well, and consultants is really important for them, isn't it?
Yes, and I was just about to say, so yeah, it depends on the employer. They may require that to, it shows it, like Sam said earlier, it shows your ability as such. So when you go into, if you're applying for new jobs and things like that, you can say, I've got, I'm certified to this level,
Yeah,
I know this stuff. I know more than this stuff because, it's due to experience and things like that. But at least I've got this base level. Microsoft has certified me. I've done this exam.
yeah,
Microsoft certified me. So I'm good for this part if that's what you're looking for, kind of thing. And yeah, I mean, in the Microsoft partner space, um, to kind of go into it, to keep some of our silver and gold partner statuses, some of it is to do exams. So there is we have been encouraged to do some of them, but it should always be, for yourself, to prove your worth,
yeah,
prove who prove that prove to yourself that you're that you're at that level.
yeah,
Um, that's
yeah.
part of the reason why I did a couple of the ones I've done as well. So
Yeah. I think it's just if people don't know that if you do work for a Microsoft Silver or Gold partner, they do need to have a certain number of certified people inside of their organization to keep that gold or silver level. And dependent on what certifications their employees have dictates what speciality they are in that partner space. So um, let's use an example. The app, give me one of yours out.
the security competency, so silver or
Yeah,
gold in security,
yeah,
because it's the space I work in. So that requires our staff to have um, the MS 500 or the AZ 500, which are both security engineer in Azure or security administrator in Microsoft 365.
yeah,
To have a couple, two or three having that for silver, and for gold to have multiple people having those certifications.
yeah,
Um, and it's I think if you look at it from the other side is when you're bringing partners in, you want to know the people you're working with are at a standard level as well.
yeah,
Um, and you look
yeah,
at it from the partner side. I mean,
yeah,
we're kind of biased a little bit on that, but
yeah. But I mean, I think it's just good to point out that let's say you've applied to work at a company, and there's you who is certified and somebody else that isn't. Regardless of how good those people are, actually, um, day to day, right? And I'm just using a really simple example. If that partner needs to keep a certain amount of headcount that's certified, right? So there is a definite value benefit to that partner by hiring and also encouraging those certifications inside of their organization, right?
Yeah, I think it would definitely help with employment with partners, but
Yeah.
yeah, obviously there's more. There are other factors as well to get into those spaces. It's not just about having all the certs
Oh yeah, no, I
certification.
definitely, I don't want to make it seem like you have to have them, but I'm just, I'm saying that there is definitely a tangible benefit to those employers.
Yeah, definitely. And I've seen job roles going out asking for some as well. On LinkedIn and things like that.
Yeah,
Not
yeah,
not
no, for sure.
looking, but you
Yeah.
get the ads.
Hashtag not looking if anybody's listening. No, yeah,
Yeah.
no, but that is it. I'm looking for, I'm looking for two, MCSD certified contractors, right? That could, that LinkedIn post must go out all the time, So,
Yes.
because it's just a really easy way to filter down the number of people out there. Okay, so that's great.
Yeah. So are there ways of learning for free? Do you have to pay? Do you have to go, well, not in today's world, but go, join a webinar and be trained by, professionals um, out there? Is there other ways of doing it, Sam?
Yeah, I mean, whenever you're learning a new skill, there is definitely, a level that you can get to by yourself, right? There is, Microsoft have an amazing section on their website called Microsoft Learn, which has, so many, so much free learning information, right? There is really good guided learning paths there because it's in Microsoft's best interest to give you the best training that they possibly can and the most amount of information, right? So there are definite free um, sources out there. So Microsoft Learn. So when you pick, a certification, it actually links it straight on the certification page. It's like, here, start this learning path. And and go on to Microsoft Learn, and you log in, and it records your progress, kind of like any other online learning provider. And yeah, and you can just follow straight through and learn straight off the bat, can't you?
Yeah, and they're updating it all the time. So when I was doing my role-based certifications, there was none of so, some of the exams or the modules that I was doing didn't have any of this Microsoft Learn
Yeah,
free stuff,
yeah.
so I had to self-learn or look at other methods at that point.
Yeah, and I mean, the new content is going on all the time, and we're not
Absolutely.
talking about, smaller, small amounts of content, right? Let's just have a look at one of these. Like, so there's, introducing to developing with the Power Platform. It's a learning path, right? A Dynamics one, and it's intermediate level. It's for developers apparently, and it's 2 hours and 22 minutes of content, and that's just one that I've just got the page open here in front of me, and that's just like one of the first ones I've seen. Like building, so a learning path here, building finance and operations apps for Dynamics. 13 hours and 23 minutes of content. I mean,
Wow.
so there's a lot of information here for you.
Yeah, and I think they've increased the speed of how much they're putting on there, due to COVID
Oh,
and
without
people
a doubt.
being
Yeah,
furloughed and things like that. Getting people to skill up whilst
yeah,
they're unable to work for the business as such, so they can at least self improve themselves and things like
yeah,
that. So yeah,
yeah.
they've definitely powered on.
Definitely. Another place that I often look at is YouTube, especially for my. I don't really know from your side, Al, from like the office sort of side, but for developers, there are there's Channel 9, there's all the Microsoft have got. I think there's loads of YouTube accounts that Microsoft have got. I don't know if there's a place that you can go that lists them all, but there's lots of different official Microsoft content that goes out there. The format is a little bit less formal. It's not maybe training, but it's general platform updates. Azure Fridays, and podcasts and whatnot.
Yeah, absolutely. So recently, the security team that look after Defender ATP recently announced become a Microsoft Defender ATP Ninja Cat. Um, and they've released a load of training around SecOps and security administrators around that product. and
Yeah.
they've done loads of YouTube videos. I think they were tweeting around. I think it was last night actually, talking about it. So
Yeah. Okay.
even the product teams are pushing content out as well to
Yeah.
help,
That.
not
Yeah.
necessarily for accreditation, but at least for product usability and things like
Yeah.
that.
As somebody that subscribes to these YouTube channels, I can tell you that they upload in batches and hundreds of hours of content at a time, right? Like my subscription feed gets absolutely smashed like when they push out new updates. So yeah, the amount of, and obviously around the conferences and the big news events, there's even more content coming out all the time. So if you take build is all uploaded to YouTube. It's all there to watch afterwards.
Yeah, we've got Inspire soon, haven't we? And then
Yep.
Ignite. So there's gonna be loads of content to catch up on and changes.
Yeah, definitely. And the great thing about a silver lining of the current pandemic is that those conferences you can register, to get remote access. So it's not like a, you know, to, you could always stream, couldn't you? Anyway, to the
Yeah,
conferences, but the whole conference is online now. So all the efforts going into that online streaming, and you can just absorb that at your leisure, either live or once it's been recorded afterwards.
yeah,
Uh,
absolutely. So the other places that you can look, so Microsoft bring out blogs,
yep.
um,
I
for
think
all the
every
new.
product team has a blog, right?
Yeah,
I don't know that if that's like a hard and fast rule, but it seems like if there is a product, there is a blog for it.
yeah, definitely. There's tons of them. I mean,
Yeah,
I think I'm subscribed to 4 or 5 or 6 or so. We,
yeah,
talk about the things that we've done to keep up with all the updates and
yeah,
all the
definitely.
messages we get daily.
Yeah. I think one
Um,
thing to say about that is try not to subscribe to, well, it's still subscribe to them and follow them, but the big, so there's like an Azure news uh blog, but it's a lot more high level about maybe strategical decisions with Azure, and do you know what I mean? Instead of if you're learning about a specific technology or platform with inside of Microsoft, it might be worth finding the product team um you know that actually work on it and find their blogs, and maybe even their social media
yes,
presences as
definitely.
well. Yeah.
Definitely their social media. They're all out there. They're all tweeting all the new stuff or asking questions or saying about, this the stuff I was talking about earlier about, Microsoft Defender, Ninja Cats and things like that.
Yeah.
I think they brought out one around, Sentinel and being a Ninja Cat in Sentinel as
Okay.
well. So it seems to be a
Yeah.
theme. Maybe there's gonna be more out there.
Well, everybody's going to be a ninja cat, are they?
Yeah, well then yeah, then everyone's normal then, I guess. But,
Yeah. Ninja cat, ninja dog, ninja parrot, like yeah, whatever it'll be. Um, yeah.
yeah,
And
so
one other area that I put in here is also about the actual documentation, Microsoft
yeah.
documentation as well, because whilst you're going through this training, there are a load of good, out of the box examples where they might, get you to sign up to an Azure subscription and make something and then shut it down, or whatever they're teaching you. But if you have got a specific problem that you're trying to solve, the actual documentation that Microsoft provides is really detailed, right? Isn't it? It's there to help professionals when they either get stuck or they're working on a new platform or technology. So the Microsoft documentation is really good.
Yeah, when they moved to docs.microsoft.com, the world got better,
Yeah.
definitely, because it was a bit everywhere.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
Tech
for sure.
Community, and all the other various places you had to go and find it, and now
Uh,
it's all lives in one place.
yeah, and I think that's driven from the fact that you can comment on it. It's all on GitHub. It's all open source, isn't it? So technically anybody can edit it. Obviously, they must go through some sort of quality checking, but that really has it's allowed them to really focus in and add specific knowledge, where people are getting stuck, or specific areas that people need more information on.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what about other training? Like, so we've talked about free options, and there is loads of free content out there, right? I'll give you the example of the learning path on, learn.microsoft for Azure fundamentals is 9 hours and 48 minutes, right? So that's pretty big for a fundamental learning path. But let's say you don't like to learn by yourself. What other sort of paid options are there out there?
Yeah, so you've got the the classroom training, more
Yep.
probably more remote in the current situation,
Yes, e
um,
classrooms. Yeah.
but yeah, I've done a couple of those
Yep. I've
in
been
the
on those before.
past.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're quite good. They're quite detailed, very structured. You in
Yep.
effect, I mean, the ones I did, you in effect had a course book in effect, and basically ran through that book and all the modules in there, which
Yep.
kind of covered. I I kind of say it covers every area that you might have in the exam,
Yep.
but I still feel that you need to sort of have a little bit of experience actually doing this kind of stuff
Yeah, I
as
think it's
well.
always good to put things into practice, right? That's why I kind of like the online learning paths because you can do it in a free Azure account whilst you're actually doing it, right?
Yeah,
And you can actually test some of this stuff out because there are areas that because yeah, it's hard to reinforce that learning by just reading and absorbing, right?
yeah. I mean, I'm not great at. I'm good. I love the videos and things like that, but I'm not great at reading a book
Yep.
around learning. I'm not that type of person. I'm more of a
No,
hands-on person. So
without a
for
doubt, yeah.
for me, I prefer to get stuck in, find the
Yep.
problems, try and fix it myself, learn that way. That's my sort of training
Yeah.
mechanism, I guess. That other people out there can watch YouTube videos, read books, and still understand it the same way as I do. It's just
Yeah.
my learning technique.
Yeah, I mean, in person, personally for me, doesn't really work that well. I'm a tinkerer, like I exactly like what you said. I've always done ever since I've started my professional career. I've always learnt on the job, so that's how it sort of has worked out for me. But what I like about video based or e-learning is that you can go through it at your own pace. You can start and stop the video. You can rewind it. You don't have to take you don't have to be speed writing notes whilst the instructor's taking you through something. You've got all of the content that you need in front of you to pass the exam.
Yeah, and I guess in the online training kind of thing, you can do a module. Then, if whether you're doing it as as you're seeing the videos and everything, but you can take maybe one day you do that module, and then the next day you start doing actually going into it yourself. So do the
Yep.
mixture of I've been taught something, and now I'm trying to actually do it to
Yep.
get it in get it to stick in your mind.
Yeah, for sure.
Where, like you said, on a training course where you've got 5 days of training, you kind
Yeah.
of semi rushed into it. I
Yeah,
feel
for
a little
sure.
bit.
Yeah. Well, you've done all this, you've tried to absorb all this knowledge in 5 days, and then it might not be 3 months, it might be 3 months until you actually start to use it on a real project, and um, I'd be amazed if anybody can retain knowledge, without actually putting it into practice. So yeah, I think it's yeah.
Yeah,
If you can get some hands on, that's the way to go.
and it's not only that. It could be that you've done that exact, those classes or virtual classes for for the 5 days, and you maybe in 2 or 3 months' time you take the exam, and maybe you've lost that because you've maybe not done the hands-on kind of thing. You forget things. I mean, I do, and
Yeah,
that's why I like
without
tinkering, or like you
yeah,
said, or hands-on.
yeah, definitely.
But yeah, there's some other providers out there that provide the videos.
Yeah.
Is it
Um,
Pluralsight? Is
Yeah,
one of them?
Pluralsight. Yeah, I mean, I've had a Pluralsight subscription in the past. There are also some free. There's some free video content I think on Pluralsight,
Mm,
isn't there, for some
yeah,
of
I think
the
it's
roles?
part of the COVID kind of things. They brought out a couple of months or 3 or 4 months subscription for free, and I think there's actually a subscription or a free subscription part for a year that you could actually get some of the Azure stuff as well. Um,
Okay.
and you can kind of on there they've got this sort of assessment tool kind of that basically gives you some questions and gets more difficult or less difficult depending on how you answer, to
Yeah.
try and understand where you are in those areas, so you can kind of self assess where you might be with that role. For the Azure security one, the identity, securing storage containers and things like that. Um, so you can get an idea, and then after that, it gives you sort of the where you should start within the training kind of things.
Okay. Awesome.
But yeah, so shall we talk about how the exams work?
Ugh, exams. Well, they sound scary, Alan.
Yeah. So
Don't say it like that. We're trying to convince people that they should
no, they're not too
go and
bad.
do their
So
exams.
there's
Yeah,
two
go on.
ways of taking. So if we talk about the two ways of taking exams before we go into exams, so
Yep.
obviously I can't talk about what's the contents in them, but I kind of give an idea of how they're structured, or the ones I've done at least.
Yep. Go
Um,
on.
so there's two ways of taking the exam. There's going to an exam center, booking it online, choosing a time, going to that center, taking the exam, knowing exactly at the end of the exam whether you passed or failed. It's instant.
Okay.
There's no waiting or anything like that.
Yep.
Um, or you can take the proctored exam, which is where you can do it in your own home.
Okay.
So this is it's quite strict. I mean, I make it sound really bad, but it's not. So um, they have you on video to
Yep.
make sure you're not looking away from the screen, looking at whiteboards or anything that's around you. You can't have anyone else in the room. If they hear anything, um, not when I say hear anything, if they hear another person, they cancel the exam straight away because obviously you could be cheating.
Yep.
But as part of the setup, what they do is they get you to do a 360 around your room with the webcam to prove that no one else in the room. You've got no writing up on the wall, things like that. I mean, they tell you exactly what the room should be set up like. I've done a couple of them; they've been absolutely fine.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, I prefer them rather than go to exam center. Reason being is actually if you feel with the exam centers, you've kind of got to book in advance, and that could be 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks,
Yep.
8 weeks, depending on how busy they are, and whether they're doing the exam at the time. And then you got all the travel and things like that. If you've not got one local, with the proctor exam, you can actually, depending on the exam and how busy they are, you could actually book an exam for that day or the
Right.
next or
Okay.
tomorrow because they're 24/7.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, you may not want to take one at 2 a.m. in the morning, but you may want to take one at
I
2
mean,
a.m. in
that
the
might
morning.
be
Depends on,
somebody's preference, Alan. So,
yeah,
Alan,
yeah, when everyone's asleep and it's
yeah,
all
maybe.
quiet.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, so I've taken one the same day.
Yep.
They recommend turning up half an hour early to the exam and register because it takes you about half an hour to go through the process of proving your area is clean and safe and that you're not that they're happy with the environment for you to take the exam.
Yep.
But once you're taking it, it's exactly the same. They have the PC has they have like a secure browser. They have an app that basically runs, and that just basically goes full screen. And then you have your exam there, and you can't
Yep.
copy paste, you can't screen capture things like that. So,
Okay.
but yeah, I enjoyed that experience. I don't think I've not done any Microsoft exams. I have done Microsoft exams in exam room. I did a couple at night when I was
Okay.
over there.
Yeah.
Um, but that's slightly different because it's not. It was just at the event kind of thing. Um,
Yeah.
but
Okay.
yeah, so
So,
if we
so
talk
it's just
about
like
the
it's just like a traditional exam, then, isn't it? That's the
yeah
it's no except for the fact that they do have a remote option, so you can do it, in the place where you're most comfortable on your on your desk at home if you want to, or wherever, an office at work, on your equipment. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I know people have taken exams at their work in a meeting room because obviously you can't do
Yeah.
it in a room where the people could come in
Yeah.
an
Definitely.
office, but they've done the meeting room, closed it off, put a note on the site outside saying take an exam, don't come in. I guess you're
Yeah.
paying.
Or you're going to pay for my recency.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes.
Exactly.
Um,
Okay. Yep.
but yeah, so and the time you get is I think for the associate and the expert one you get about 3 hours.
Okay.
Um, don't quote me on that, but I think it's around 3 hours. And I think
Okay.
the fundamental ones, I think it's around 90 minutes to 2 hours, I think it is.
Okay.
Um,
All right.
so the exams themselves. Um, so it depends on they're always different. So um, they brought in so one thing they brought in recently was they did lab exams. So
Okay.
part of the exam itself was basically you going into Azure or 365 and actually doing something. So
Yeah.
they've got on the
Okay.
right hand side, configure this or set this up. Um, and one thing to note is, for instance, if you don't, there's multiple ways of getting to some of these blades or areas within Azure and Microsoft 365.
Yeah.
Um, it doesn't matter which way you get to it, as long as the result is that it's been configured. So
Okay.
if for some reason you can't remember, how to get to Azure AD for some reason, and you're searching here and you're searching through all the different menus, and finally you get it, you don't get marked down for how long you take on to get to it. You're just getting marked on performing that action. So don't worry about
Okay.
not knowing exactly how to get to it. You're not going to be judged on that
Yeah.
you knew.
So if it's like go into Intune and configure something, you accidentally go into, AD first,
Yeah.
and you're like, oh, actually no, Intune's not inside of here. It's in like, or do you know what I mean? It doesn't
Yep.
matter that you've gone like round the houses to get to it. Obviously, you've got a certain amount of time that you have to complete it
Yes.
in, but that's your only limiting factor.
Yeah. So that's kind of good. I've not had one of those, but a colleague of mine, Chris, has. He's had it on both of his exams that he's taken.
Okay.
Um, I mean, I've taken quite a few now, and I've not had it. I've been kind of dreading it a little bit, but not. I think I'd be okay.
Don't you
Um,
think it would help you though, because you'd actually have the full Azure interface instead of
yeah,
like maybe just answering questions? You can sort of work it out if you didn't know exactly.
yeah. I think it's a different way of proving your knowledge, isn't it? Rather than just
Yeah,
being Q&A.
yeah,
Um, so one part of the exam is Q&A, multi-choice. There's this question: which one of these is the right answer? And some of
yeah.
them can be tricky. Um, some of them can be very close to what you think they should be, or could be two answers in there. It's very. Some of them aren't tricky. Some of them are fairly obvious. Some of it's around, if you don't know the answer, some of it is just working out what it definitely isn't.
Okay.
I'm not going to say get it, but there's a
But
reasonable.
there's some logical,
Yes.
it's pretty obvious that there are some logical, some options that are incorrect, and there's maybe, it's then up to a 50-50 toss if you had to guess it.
Yeah, and I've been stuck with a couple of questions where I've been like, "Oh, it could be both." Is it, I'm trying, and then you're there, sort of just taking a few minutes just to reread the question or the
Yeah.
scenario, just to make sure. Um, and you can give feedback on these exams as well, so you can set your answer, and actually you can give feedback and say, "Well, this is close." I'm finding it difficult to understand which one is which, so they can then improve the exams later. I've done that on one of the exams because one of them was, it could have been two of the answers, and
Okay.
which one are they trying to get? I just couldn't get that. But
Okay.
um, yes, there's that section. One section I've had is that they give you a scenario, um, and for like 4 or 5 questions, you can't go back. So you got to answer them as they are in that scenario. So it will say something like, you're trying to set up cloud security, and you want to be able to do session control. An example. Will this scenario, will this action solve the issue? Yes or no? Or
Okay.
complete the scenario. And
Yeah.
you say yes, and then it will go to the next one, and it will
Yeah.
say the same um, question, but it will say this solution. Will this meet the criteria? And it's
Okay.
yes or no. And whilst they're asking the same question, um, it mentions that you could have multiple that are right, multiple that are wrong. They could all be
Yeah.
right, or they could all be wrong.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's very interesting. It does get you thinking whether you've done, the last question you
Yeah.
answered, whether you were right.
Yeah.
It's not, no, it's nothing to worry about. You're answering it as you feel.
Yeah,
Um,
so it's not just a bunch of Q&A questions, which
no,
is true or false statements or pick one from a list. It could be any number are right, any number are wrong, or none could be right, or or
yeah,
how So okay,
yeah. I guess
yep.
it's just trying to make sure you kind of understand the technology in that
I
area rather
think
than guessing.
Yeah, I mean, because it's not, like maybe a traditional exam where you would write an answer where you describe out, your solution to a problem, and
Yeah,
a professional then marks it and says, okay, well, overall this person knows what they're talking about, but they maybe didn't. They have to be objective, right?
yeah,
But the questions have to be complicated enough that it's not just all very simple multiple choice, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
So the last section that I've had is a scenario section. So what they give you is they give you in effect a case study. So they give you loads of information. A Contoso is got 10 servers. Two of them are in Japan. Two of them are in LA. That kind of thing. They're connected this way. They have 10 machines in Japan and 20 machines in LA. They're all configured this way, and you've got loads of information.
Yep.
Um, and then what they do is they choose a specific sort of area and say, how is this correct? Does this resolve the issue? There's an issue that the LA machines can't talk to the machines over at Japan, and what's the reason? Should I configure it this way?
Yep.
Um, but there's loads of information. There'll be information about how many domain controllers they've got or something, and it's nothing to do with this actual question. So they kind of use the same scenarios, but you change the question to be different parts of the
Yep. Yeah.
the
So
um, the
so
scenario, I guess. Yeah,
so for so to get so it sort of gives you a holistic view of the whole system and structure,
yeah,
and then it might only ask you questions about specific elements of that structure, right?
yeah. It's kind of, I guess, it's kind of real world. It's kind of what I do in my day to day. I guess
Yeah.
is scoping the environment and then working out what solutions there are. So, and you
Yeah.
get a couple of those, and they tend to be one or two questions on one scenario, and then it moves to another scenario and goes through that, and then that's the end of the exam. I think to talk about the point system, generally you have to get 700 out of 1,000, or I think it's 1,000. Um, but each question is weighted differently every exam based
Yeah.
on what sort of information you're providing or how
Yeah.
difficult it is. So
S-
you can't think, oh, I've answered all those 20 questions right, and that's 200 points as an example.
Yeah.
It could be at
Exactly.
one question's worth 1 point, one question's worth 20 points.
Yeah. And you
Um,
could have an exam full of 20-point questions, technically,
yes.
couldn't you? And then that would make your exam harder, but the amount of, answers you have to get correct would be lower, right? Because the ones that you did get are worth more points. Okay.
Yeah, correct. I mean, I'd expect maybe the scenario bits, maybe, I don't know what they're going to be weighted at, but, maybe 80, 60 points and
Yeah.
so on. I don't know. I
Okay.
don't know and that it's not publicized how they weight
Calculate that
them.
number.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but
Okay.
yeah, and I've done a couple of the exams, and they're not that scary. I was always worried about the old style ones because it used to try and do the Windows exams, the Windows 10 ones,
Yeah.
before they got replaced. And I was quite worried about those because you had to be very specific about what you had to know. They
Yeah.
asked you to type in PowerShell commands and things like that. This one, there's no typing as far as I'm aware. All the exams I've done, there's more around um, how do you do something in PowerShell, and then they give you a list of commands, and you got to choose which one it is. So you don't have to know exactly you don't have to spell it correctly or anything like that.
Yeah.
Because I mean, let's face it, we all in PowerShell we all tab
Yeah.
when
Without a
we
doubt. Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
sometimes we know most of it, or
And
we'll
I think
find it
that's and
eventually.
I think that's one thing as well, just to reiterate as well, is if you're not certified, it doesn't mean that you're any less of a
No,
professional, or you're not. I know so many incredibly competent professionals out there, and they have never taken a Microsoft exam in their life. And they might specialize in, well, for me, like .NET, C Sharp, or Xamarin. So yeah, it's not these if for professionals, I think this is more validation of your skill versus learning necessarily.
yeah, absolutely. It's yeah, it's just the
And I don't
proving.
want to I don't want to annoy anybody at Microsoft by saying that, because I obviously know that there's obviously, a huge amount of people that take, a lot of learning from this. But if you're a professional in one of these areas, for me, this is just validation of what you can do, because you're already massively competent.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's what I was kind of saying at the start. I've been, I've certified myself in a couple of these, but I know, I would say my level is higher than some of those because of my experience and things like that.
Correct.
So
Yeah.
it's just proving that, at a base, I'm at that level, so
Yeah.
that, I mean, for me, when we go into, when we do some work alongside Microsoft, it just proves that, they know what sort of level I'm at, so they can, don't
Definitely.
have to worry about explaining too much to me, um,
Yeah.
and that kind of thing.
That's
So,
true. How much do the exams cost?
so I think, well, I don't know what they are today, but I think they're around. So the fundamental one was around £99 in the UK. Don't know if I think that was plus VAT,
Yeah. Okay.
um, and I think it was £113 for the exams for, to meet some of the associate and the expert level,
Yeah.
um, accreditation. I think it was about £135 with VAT.
Okay.
Um,
So they can be relatively expensive. So I mean that's just the cost for the exam, right? So that's with
yep,
no instructor led training. But I suppose so if you do have an employer that is willing to pay for you to do these exams, it can be another way of because it's going to cost them money to do so, and that's money that you're not going to have to spend. So that's one way of doing it. And just to also reiterate as well, when you do an exam or you become certified, you are certified, not your company,
yes.
right? So you get certified on your personal Microsoft account, and then you attach that Microsoft account to your company's partner profile. And what that means is if you were to get another job, I mean, there could be contracts where you have to pay back, training costs and all of that sort of stuff. But in terms of if you were to leave your job, you would not lose your accreditation.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, in the partner world, yeah, we associate our personal learning accounts to the partner, so that our certification can go against
Yeah,
our, towards our gold and silver competencies,
yeah,
um, as we were talking about earlier. And
cool.
yeah, and the whole thing about what Sam said, you may have to, it might be part of your contracts to, pay back. That's not just, Microsoft exams. That could be for any training you do,
Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
in other
100%.
technologies and things like that. So,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah, I mean, I've worked for some really good employers who would 100% support any sort of learning and extra. I've had time in work time before in the past to do these sort of things. I've been sent away on in-person training because it is, it's investment in your team, in your employees. So it's an overall net benefit for everybody.
yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So from your perspective, Al, should somebody get certified? Like just to give your 2 cents.
Yep, yep, definitely. It's, like I said, it's self worth, and proving that you know the technology. Um,
Yeah. I
and you
mean,
you
from
can always get a little badge for your
yeah, Al
signature
does
and things
love
like that.
like his little badges, I must admit. But no, but that is, there is gratification there. You get your, certificates, you get your pins, you get your badges. It does add something to your professional, um,
Yeah,
your
and
CV.
just one thing we didn't mention was that when you get buy exams, you can, get them with, some retakes. So it's like if it's like half the price,
Yeah.
to be able
If
to
you
take
were
two
to,
exams kind of thing, or you can buy practice exams as well. There are some out
yeah,
there. Um,
exactly. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, from my perspective, I think it's if you have the time, because that is one thing
yes.
that it's very easy if your company is very forward thinking and gives you loads of time in work time to do it. In and around other work that you've got to do. I mean, as somebody with a young family, learning in my own time is it's going to eat into that. That's something that I would have to give up to do more accreditations. So do I think it's worth it? Yes, but you have to be realistic about the amount of time that you have in your life to do these things. So I think if you're starting your professional journey, I think it's something you should definitely invest in. Your time as well as your money. I think it's definitely worth it. Especially if you're going to stay inside of the Microsoft ecosystem for a long time.
Yeah,
Cool.
definitely. So
Alright, so yeah, I think that's a well, we talked quite a lot about,
yeah,
but there is a lot to talk about with training, because there is so many, and I think, for everybody that's listening, I think you should go out there, go and look at, the Learn, website. I'll put the links into the show notes, but yeah, just go and have an explore, and if you've, got any questions, then reach out to us.
yeah. So shall we move on to some quick news?
Yeah, I'm not going to add any news bits this week, because yeah, well, I can't really say that because it's so horrible to Microsoft, but there wasn't really anything I wanted to put into this episode. So, but I know Al's got a couple of bits
Yeah. So Microsoft Defender again. Sorry, guys, but
again.
yeah, I
Microsoft
know,
Defender. I thought this was Azure. It
I
is
know.
kind of
Well,
Azure, isn't it? But yeah, it
yeah,
is. Right.
but
Anyway, go on.
so they've had web content filtering within the product itself. So kind of proxy equivalent
This
solution.
is
So you
just
can
ATP, right? This isn't
this is
like
Microsoft Defender
normal.
ATP. Yes, but all built in.
Yep.
They had it, and they had a third party you had to sign up with called Cyan, I think it was. You had to
Okay.
pay a subscription per user to basically get the categories, gambling, that sort of stuff, and be able
Yep.
to block that mass storage. Um,
Yep.
but in the last week or so, they've and now I think they've basically got a partnership with Sign, but now you can just run it yourself, and it will start blocking those sort of things. So it means you can almost do so in today's world when everyone's working from home. You may have VPNs, virtual private networks, to the to your data center to then run
Yep.
through the standard proxy solutions that are out there, or
Yep.
you may have cloud ones. Um, but now Defender can do it itself, and it's all included in the current pricing. So
That
don't have to
doesn't
pay out
sound
anymore.
good for solution providers out there, for proxy solution providers. Anyway,
Yeah,
yep,
so it's really good. We're, I mean, we're testing it out now at my, where I work now. So
yep,
we've seen it there, but um, we're now testing it, and it looks pretty good. It comes up with warning message saying been blocked from these websites. It's also got a learning mode, audit mode, so you can kind of see where people would be hitting and where it would be blocked. And you can do allow for certain groups of people and things like that. So you may block social media, but only allow marketing to do Twitter and Facebook, as an example. Um, so yeah, so that's pretty cool. The only other thing that I've seen, well, there's loads of things I've seen, but one of the things that looks good is with Microsoft Cloud Security, you can do session control, which has been there for a while now. But um, what you can do now is that it will check for malware as you're browsing your corporate applications via the session control. So you may have the example is a corporate Dropbox, and someone's got into it
okay,
somehow, put malware documents, things like that, tells you to get to the link. So then you go through your normal authentication with that and go through the sys control. Download this file because it's your
yeah,
corporate one. You trust it. Grab the file and it will
yeah,
block you from downloading it because it's scanning it on the fly.
okay,
So that's one of the things
okay,
that they're bringing.
amazing.
So yeah, there were a few other things, but we'll leave it at that because I think we're definitely a longer episode. This one,
Yeah, no, but I think that just goes to show that even though we've only had a couple of weeks since the last podcast, it's just more and more functionality that's coming out. And I mean, there has been much more than that, but again, there was nothing that sort of jumped out
yeah.
to me
I
to
mean, some of
include.
it will
So,
be
but yeah,
slowing up a little bit from being announced. It may already be in there because we've seen the Defender stuff sort of creep in a couple of weeks ago, and then it was announced last week. But with
yeah,
Ignite coming up in August, um, they're going to be sort of getting
yeah,
everything ready in deployed, but not talking about it until then. Uh,
yeah. When is Ignite in August?
I don't know off the top of my head. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
there we go. I got you. Okay, cool. Yeah, well, there you go. We'll obviously definitely do a
Yes.
podcast on Ignite because I'm sure Al could talk for 3 hours about that. So we'll definitely have a
Yeah,
podcast for
definitely.
that.
So,
Okay,
I'm gonna do a shout out because 'cause I've had some people. Yeah,
a
well,
shout out. Whoa, whoa, this is not
no?
in the show notes, right? No, I'm only messing. I'm only messing. A shout out. This ain't a
No.
sponsor spot, is it? That I
No,
haven't been
no, no.
included on.
So,
No, go
um,
on.
a colleague of mine, Stacey
Uh,
Dixon, has been listening and is saying that she's loving the, podcast so far. So,
How much did you pay her to
nothing
to say
yet.
that?
Um, but,
Okay,
she did
fine.
say, as feedback was that she's, missing like an ending tune or, the intro kinda
Oh,
thing, and it's
yeah.
one of the things we've been thinking about, haven't we? But, we've not looked into it yet.
Yeah, it's like, we should get Charlie Sheen, like 2.5 Men to come and do us a jingle or something like that, you know? I just I can't. I mean, I did look at it, like, maybe going on to, like, Fiverr or something and getting an intro and an outro done, you know what I mean? But they were so, like the whole thing with this podcast is just like
I
me and
know.
you chatting, right? And it's not like this production or anything like that. And I was like, all of the ones that I found were they just reminded me of like local radio, and I was like, I can't. I was like, I was just like, and I listened to some other ones like Scott Hanselman's podcast. He's got one, and it's basically exactly the same. And I'm like, and yeah, we definitely do need one. And I completely agree. But
Maybe we should see if,
yeah, we just need.
Chris can, mix something up for us because he's into,
Yeah,
mixing a few things up.
yeah, yeah. I mean, if there's anybody out there that wants to make us an intro and outro, I got no problems. I'll use it. It's just that sort of thing. I don't know, and I don't know anybody, to be honest with you, in this sort of space, in the podcasting space, that does that sort of thing, right? Like, I don't know a sound engineer, or I don't even know what the sort of person to search for is, you know. So, but yeah, okay, we'll definitely take that on board, and hopefully, in a future episode, we should have a little bit more professionalism. Brilliant.
So what is next time? So we'll probably aim for 2 weeks, won't we?
Yeah, we'll probably aim for 2 weeks. We were waiting for this equipment to turn up, so we had a bit of a delay with this one. Let me just go into the folder. We did go through to work out some future shows. Okay, so next episode we're going to talk about Azure Security Center.
Okay, cool. So
Al's is gonna
mhm.
Al's gonna give us a run through on that.
Yeah, well, it's a bit of both worlds then, isn't it? It's definitely Azure and it's security, so it's kind of both
Yeah,
our
yes, it's a
bags.
good it's a good blend of yeah, I mean, I'll come at it from the infrastructure side and the development side, right?
Yeah,
And then I was going to talk about the other parts of the security center as well. So
cool.
whatever he does all day. But anyway, okay, cool. All right, well, thanks, Al. And yeah, thanks everybody for listening.
Yep, thanks everyone. It's going well, I think, so far.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, our numbers are going up every time. So yeah, we're enjoying doing this. It is like we've said before in the past. It's just me and Al chatting with each other like we would anyway. So, so yeah, I'm glad. If I'm really hope that everybody's getting at least some value out of it.
Yep,
All right.
brilliant. All right, and everyone, until next time, we'll speak to you then. Bye.
Yeah. Cheers. Bye.
So